beautiful human. I'm Zach, that's Sandy. Welcome to the studio. Alex from All Time Low.
Hey! Thank you for having me.
No. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
We have a lot to discuss. We have an entire, you're pulling a Taylor Swift. You're doing a re-record.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, is that fair to say? Is that like the wrong thing to say?
No, it's not the wrong thing at all. I mean, it pretty much is literally that. It's different motives, different reasons.
Yeah.
Our own. But
what are the motives? Like, why now?
So we have this feud with our ex-manager. No, we basically, for us, it's autonomy. It's a little bit of, like when you look back at an old yearbook photo and you see yourself at 16 years old wearing a puka shell necklace, or I don't know how you dressed when you were 16, but that was me.
Abercrombie, Hollister.
Bleach blonde tips, thinking I was very cool. But then I look back now and I go, buddy, what were you doing? What were you doing back then, buddy? So listening to our old recordings, when it hits me, like I'm at a bar and Dear Maria comes on, it's that sort of feeling. It's like being shown an old photograph of yourself and being like,
could have done better, or
yeah. And but
there's
I
also something
hesitate to
amazing
say,
for what it is, right?
I hesitate to say could have done better because it's what we did then.
Yeah.
But knowing what we know now, looking back, these songs are still such massive parts of our show, massive parts of our live set, and like pretty pivotal in our catalog. And it's just they don't, in my opinion, they don't quite stack up to where some of our new music stacks up. We're in a really unique position. We've been a band for a long time. We're past 20 years now.
Nuts.
So it's kind of wild. Like it's mind-blowing to us. And it's just sometimes hard. Like we go back and listen to old songs in comparison to new songs. And it's just like, that's not even my voice anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's kind of a way to reinvent and put a new spin on the old staple songs from our catalog that like just make me feel more comfortable having them out there in the world.
So what are you going back and doing differently? Because, Dear Maria sounds the same, but yet it sounds different.
I love it. It sounds like a bit heavier and your vocals are a bit grittier.
Thank you.
I think it sounds so good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, it honestly, especially with that song, there was an element of like threading the needle a little bit that was like, we didn't want to go so far from the original that it felt like we were doing a disservice to what the original did for everyone. That's an important song in our catalog and with our fan base, and arguably has had like 3-4 different lives throughout our career.
Crazy.
Keeps finding ways to rise back to the top. And so, it was like we needed to not depart so much that it felt like a betrayal to what got us here in the first place. But also, yeah, to your point, just a little bit louder, a little bit more refined, a little bit more dialed in. We've played that song a lot. There's some nuances that we've developed live during the show that I think like have made their way into the new version that just kind of elevate it. And then the other part of it too is like, I think back then when we recorded the songs, we weren't thinking about like, can we get these to sound and feel like we're at the show? And I think with those early recordings, or with those early songs, I mean, it's important for them to feel like our live show. So there was an aspect of trying to get that feel in there, the grittiness that you mentioned, the sibilance of just making it feel like you're standing in front of a PA. When you turn them up loud, it feels really good. And I think that kind of, I think we beat the old ones there.
You talked about like what got you here. Do you know what got you here? What's allowed you to withstand decades and decades?
I mean, there's a long-winded answer to that, and then there's the cop-out answer, which is for me to say, no, it's just been a crazy ride. But no, I mean, there's a million things that have gone into it. A fan base that gives us a really wide lane to operate in. I feel like we've changed our sound here and there through the years, and it's either, done us some good or at times brought us into a lull. And navigating those lulls as they happen is a huge part of it. The four of us have stayed the four of us ever since we started the band. I think that's a huge part of it. Really being like best friends and brothers in this project and approaching everything from that side of things, saying, no matter what, we have each other's backs. And I think that's been really important in the growth of the band. And not getting stagnant, not getting complacent. I think just always striving for another, what haven't we done yet? What haven't we accomplished yet? How can we pivot and be agile and find the next thing? I think it's those things have all sort of contributed. But then also just being like foolishly in love with the gig. We love playing shows.
I get that. Like you have to have that like that motivation, that push in order to really do this, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where the money's also coming from. That and back catalog, I would assume.
What's interesting is when we started this band, obviously we were kids out of high school. And so it wasn't so much about the money or the sustainability, you know, it was just like, we're just going out on the road and having fun and let's see what happens. But now you get 10 years into this thing and like, that's a career. Now it's like we rely on this to make our ends meet. We rely on this to provide for our families. And then it reframes how you look at the whole thing because you become a little bit more grateful for all of it and more passionate about reaching those next steps and those next goals. But I mean, it's even just like how you strategize it. It's just kind of like, how do we keep this thing going and keeping it fresh for us and fresh for our audience and operating it like a business. Like it kind of sucks no one likes to talk about that side of it, you know, because it takes the art and the fun and the rock and roll out of it a little bit. But that's real, you know, it's a business.
Do you think you take less risks today than you did before?
Maybe more calculated risks.
Yeah.
I think when there's a roll of the dice to be made, it's maybe a bit more thought out. And less like when we started, we just threw anything at the wall and hoped that it stuck. And if something worked, it was like, okay, chase that for a little bit. See what happens if we keep pulling that thread. I think now whenever we go into a record cycle or anything, there's definitely a bit more of a sit down and how do we see the next 2 years going?
Do you think that hurts or helps?
Both. You know, I think sometimes it can hurt, and we've done both. So throughout the years, I can definitely say like there have been moments where we've over think tanked it. We've over, put it through the lab a few too many times and got too many people's opinions and listened to too many outside opinions. And I think sometimes that tends to like kill some of the energy that makes it special in the first place and what has made our fans connect with it in the first place. But, I think I keep talking about threading the needle. I think there's like a sweet spot where, you can take a little time and think about it and be intentional without removing everything that makes it special at the same time.
You talked about like just throwing things up at a wall and seeing what stuck. When did you know Dear Maria was sticking?
I don't know that we ever did. I think that is such a mystery of a song for us because...
Still?
Kind of, yeah. Like I have no explanation as to why that one has stood the test of time. And like, a couple of years ago, it had a moment again on TikTok and rose to the surface as this like thing that we didn't plan that. We didn't know that was going to happen. Some kid made a video and yelled, "Mom, it was never a phase." And then suddenly like that song was the soundtrack of that bit and it popped it back to the surface and we all just went, okay, sure. Like we're not mad about it. We love our catalog. We love our old songs. So, and that's been a song, to be honest, that we've always given a special attention to. It was so Blink-182 is a band that we came up listening to. They're a huge part of the reason we're a band. They've, for the most part, always closed with "Damn It." And I, from an early age, loved the fact that they never strayed from this old song that was always the closer in their show. So Jack, the guitar player in my band, and myself kind of like leaned into that. We were like, let's pick a song. But I think at the time it was kind of random. We were just like, let's make it Dear Maria, whatever. And we always closed with that song. And I think that kind of made it staple.
It is your biggest hit though, right?
But I think it has something to do with just we've beaten people over the head with it.
I get it.
Our entire career.
Yeah, you forced it.
Maybe. Maybe.
I think it's like an anthem for the entire community, right?
That's what I mean. I don't even think it's like people that have never been to a show or may not even know you guys, they know that song.
And that's the part where I don't know when that happened.
Yeah.
I don't know when it shifted from being a song that we loved and always made a mainstay in our show to being like part of the zeitgeist of that world.
I think emo culture.
It's very weird and unexpected, and I have no idea where that shift happened or why.
Can you talk about when you were first writing that song? Like, why did you start with the cough? Was that like intentional? And then you start the song without, it's just vocals, no music. It just starts right away with your singing.
Yeah, I knew. So up until that point, we'd never really had a song that started with a chorus hook.
Yeah.
So we'd put out 7 songs on an EP before that and kind of just went like, hey, here's something we've never tried before. So let's start with the hook. I think at the time it was like kind of referencing, where is your boy tonight? I hope, like Fall Out Boy and that song, and just kind of going like, that's a cool moment. Everybody, you hear that line, everybody knows it. And I think we were sort of emulating a little bit of that. But the cough was just, it got left in there. That was just something on a vocal take of me literally like clearing my throat, having done
That was the cough.
100 takes of singing, because I was not a good singer at the time. I was probably blowing my voice out. And it was just a necessity to get the next take out sounding smooth.
When you say good singer, you mean technically not a good singer?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing.
But you sound great. You just technically don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I was never trained, and I just kind of would sing loud and do my best.
Interesting.
A lot of the time I'd blow my voice out.
Do you consider it a muscle? Right? Like, has it gotten better?
I do think I've gotten better as a singer. I think I've gotten a little more technically refined. I think I don't lose my voice as much now, and I think I know how to sing with a little more character and inflection. Sure, it's like the 10,000 hours thing. You do something enough, and naturally you just get a little better at it, and you start to perfect. But I mean, 100% is a muscle. When we go out on tour and we've taken a few months off, I have to either spend a couple weeks ramping up to tour, like singing and singing and singing in my house, which I don't do. I should do it, but I don't do it. Or we get to rehearsal 2 days before the tour starts, and I blow my voice out completely. And the first 3 shows, I'm like fighting to get my voice back, because I've gone out there like a marathon runner, having not run for 5 months, and be like, I still got it. And
Slow build.
Yeah, you got to build it back.
You guys tour a lot. Like, you're always doing shows.
It's sort of the mainstay of our business.
Has it always been fun, or is there times where you're like, God, this is feeling like a job?
No, there's always. I'd be lying if I said it's always fun. There's times when you've been out for 8-9 months in a row, and you miss your family, you miss your friends, you miss your dogs, and you kind of just want to get back and have a minute to like breathe. But that being said, I mean, I really mean it when I say this band loves playing shows. We love gigs, and I think it's it's kind of at the core of what we do is our live show. So I would also say that like we are gluttons for that punishment. Like, we love leaning in and going on long tours.
Hello, beautiful human. Every year, millions of gamers experience IGSS, inadequate gaming setup syndrome. Luckily, a cure has been found. You have to go beyond with the Vibrasonic mattress by Beyond Sleep. This thing has 6 built-in subwoofers, USB ports for charging, LED lights so you never stub your toe. It gives you an acoustic massage when you want it, plus adjustable degrees of comfort. This right here is the best way to game ever. Cure your IGSS today at BeyondSleepTech.com.
Can you tell me about the first time you and the guys like picked up instruments and played together?
Together?
And like maybe even realized that you had something?
Oh yeah. I mean, Jack and I knew each other first, and we would just go to each other's houses. I would take like my little line 6 amp over there. We'd plug in and just play together to like something on the stereo. We'd just play along to songs. Jack had his arm in a cast from breaking it, so he learned guitar literally upside down. He would play over the top of the neck of the guitar like this. So when I first met him, that's how he was playing guitar, and I was like, we gotta figure that out, because that's not gonna stick. And then we met our drummer, Ryan. He went to our high school, and he was kind of the best drummer that the high school had to offer. So we stole him from another band. We were playing with another drummer at the time, and this is pre like any semblance of a band. We were just getting together and like, jamming. So we found Ryan, then we found Zach, who really we just thought was like a really cool guy. We didn't even know if he was a good bass player. And then he came over and like played with his fingers instead of a pick. And we were like, that's so legit. That was unheard of in pop punk. Like, it was like the grit of someone picking a bass guitar is like a staple of pop punk. And he did the opposite and also skateboarded really well. And we were like, this dude's the coolest of us all. So we were like, we need him. And it was around that time that we started playing songs and like, booked a couple shows, played some like friends' birthday parties and things. And it started to kind of feel like, all right, this is like a unit. This is a band. We got a vibe here. And then it wasn't until we begged and pleaded with a local promoter in Baltimore at a venue called the Record Theater in Towson, where we all grew up. We begged this guy to put us on one of his locals only shows. It was a Sunday night show. And he was like, I'll give you a shot. And it was the first time we had a printed ticket. And so we had to have a band name. He hit us up and was like, you know, you've been begging me for months to put you on a show. And like, what do I put on the ticket? So that's when we picked the name and it stuck.
All Time Low.
Yeah.
What are other names that were options? I'm sure they were all terrible at the time, or you thought they were terrible.
Yeah, I mean, they're all bad. I think All Time Low's bad, but it's the one that stuck, you know. And it's like, I think there was like Never Wreck. There was Centerfold, and my mom was like, "That sounds like porn." No.
Yeah.
And yeah, we lifted. We had All Time Low written down. It was a line in a Newfound Glory song, which they were a band that was all over MTV and TRL at the time. We looked up to them and kind of wanted to chase that. And yeah, that was the one that just sounded the most like a band name, I guess.
It's a great band name.
Thank you. I think I'm a slightly like off with it because I've sat on so many flights where so many people who don't know my band go, "Oh, what do you do?" And you get into the conversation. I say, "I play music, whatever." They go, "Oh, what's your band called?" And I say, "All Time Low." And they go, "Why not All Time High? Why not?" And I'm just like, the amount of times that I've like cringed and had to have that conversation. I'm just like, that's the thing that makes me go, we could have picked something else. Something that didn't beg a question. You know? But yeah, no, it works. It's stuck. I think like so many bands have that though. I think like if you ask Dave Grohl if he could change the Foo Fighters to something else at this point, he'd probably be like, yeah, I'd probably go with something a little like less odd. But they're the Foo Fighters, and it is what it is.
By the way, this does tie into the fact that you're going back and re-recording and like taking a second crack at your biggest songs.
Should we change the name too?
Yeah.
It's not too late. We can fix it.
So the Forever Sessions, this is a volume 1. So is there going to be more volumes?
That's the hope. Yeah. I mean, we set out to, with this first batch, we wanted to do songs that felt like really important mainstay songs in our show. You know, Dear Maria being one of them, but like Lost in Stereo is the first song that kind of broke us in the UK. So that's a really important piece of the catalog. 6 Feet Under the Stars, even back to like Coffee Shop Soundtrack and JC Ray, which are songs that we put out on our first EP signed out of high school. So it was kind of a way to just go back and revisit these like old tunes for us that we wrote when we were teenagers.
So when do you realize that you can do this forever? Is it coming out of high school or?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. I genuinely don't think like around when we hit like a 15-year mark in the band is when we started noticing like some of our peers dropping out. So, you know, along the way, we've seen friends of ours, other acts come and go. And a lot of bands who were great and came up with us just aren't around anymore. And I think it was around that time that it started clicking with us like, wow, like we're really lucky to still be here, to still be getting to do this. And so as we've hit this 20-year mark, it was really important to us to kind of like take a minute, take pause and kind of spend a year being grateful by doing this, by like an exercise in looking back and channeling our energy into looking back. Because we've always been very driven and motivated by the next thing. Like I said, the next goal, the next big show, the next album, whatever. So this has kind of forced our hand to slow down for a second and say, take a look and celebrate the legacy and do it with your fans.
But like going back and reading the chapters you've already written will allow you to write the next best chapter.
I hope so.
You got to refresh yourself. It's been a lot, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of life has been written.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this has been a way to sort of take stock, so to speak.
It's really special.
Is it crazy to think that you wrote some of these songs in high school, like you just mentioned?
I sometimes like have a hard time getting my head around it because I don't even really remember the person I was back then, you know, like I'm 36 now and I look back and I think about who that kid was and what the goals were. And, you know, it was aimless. I knew I wanted to do this. It was at the time, I think, you know, my aspiration was just like, I don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. I don't want to go to college. School is not for me. And I just put all my energy into trying to make this thing work. And so, you know, I don't think I ever imagined that it would keep going because I didn't really plan further out than like the next week of shows at the time.
Well, you take a song like Coffee Shop Soundtrack. How old were you? Like 15, 16, 17 maybe when you wrote that?
I was, probably 17.
Do you even like remember writing it? Or is it just like you sung it so much and you just know the song so well? It's just like, it's just there.
I do remember writing it. Not all of it, not like I remember fragments. Like I remember I remember working on them. Back then, we would go and practice in Ryan, our drummer's parents' basement. And so I remember like having the little musical lick and writing that. And then I remember sitting down later and writing the lyrics separately. That's usually how I would do it then. And I kind of remember just the song itself is about kind of like feeling ready to blossom beyond the small town of Baltimore that we came up in, and fighting and wrestling with kind of this pull for more and the outside world. And yeah, I mean, it came together quickly, and we were, at the time, we were working on an EP for our first label, Hopeless Records, and we were it was that song and JC Ray that were the two new additions to that EP. The other songs that are on that EP we had recorded previously for like a full length that we self-produced in high school. It sounded, questionable at best. But yeah, it was those were the first, I look back and I go, those are the first songs that feel like they really legitimized the band into something real. Like we're on the track now to what was to come, I guess.
Does a song like Coffee Shop Soundtrack take on a new meaning today than when you wrote it?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, I think it means a lot to our fans. I think those early songs in general seem to have a real special place with our audience, and especially our core audience. Like, I look out in the crowds these days, and there are people who travel not just across the country, but across the world to see our shows. And I'll see people in the front rows that I've been seeing coming to our shows for 18 years. And they were there when we first put out Coffee Shop, and they were at the show that had 30 kids, and that was it. And they were part of that first 30, and they're still here today, bringing their kids to the shows. Like that stuff blows my mind. I mean, that is pretty crazy. It reframes the song in such an odd way.
It is interesting. Like, I do have very vivid memories of like 15 years ago, like trying to book an interview with you guys, like backstage at like Bamboozle or Warped Tour or something.
Whoa.
It was challenging. You guys were like, you were big, like, it was very hard. Like, we were nothing.
Someone stonewalled you?
Yeah. 100%.
Really?
Yes. Like, majority of like what I was able to do back then was like just based on like in the moment, like talking my way into a situation.
That's everything though. I mean, isn't fake it till you make it kind of the name of this game, like across the board?
100%. Today, if I was put in that situation, I'd be anxious. I'd never do it. It'd be like, I don't have blind confidence and I don't have blind naivete anymore. It's gone.
It takes that. It's though. I mean, yeah,
it does. Like back then, like, yeah, to establish yourself, fuck yeah.
That's how it felt back then, because we, you hear about imposter syndrome a lot, and I try not to play into my own feelings of imposter syndrome anymore. I try to remind myself, like, you've earned a place here somehow. But back then, it genuinely was like we were fighting our way, clawing our way into like the ranks. With all these other great bands that we were sort of chasing after at the time. We were sort of a third wave of like this Warped Tour world that came out of that scene. You had your Fall Out Boys and your My Chems, and before them you had your Green Days and your Offsprings, and then there was Yellow Card. And
you were the third wave.
We were sort of on the tail of all of that, going like, yeah, me too, us too. We want that. A little bit younger, a little bit greener, not as good, not as polished, but we were blindly confident that we belonged.
But who's in that like class? Is it like the Ready Set? Is it like the Cab? Like, who are the bands that were on Warped Tour? Like,
it's definitely
like Mike Posner,
like Yellow Card, maybe.
Yeah, I think we were just after that wave with Yellow Card. So, but yeah, it was us. It was We the Kings. It was Boys Like Girls. It was
Boys Like Girls. We the Kings. We love Travis.
Hey Monday.
Yeah,
we kind of all came up together.
Is
on
that
a similar,
Cassidy Pope? Right.
It is. Yeah.
God. Great.
Yeah, shout out Cass.
Dude.
Longtime friend.
Yeah, where's like Never Shout Never? The Ready Set, I love him.
Great band.
Yeah, so
great
good.
band. But to the point I made earlier, like a lot of those guys aren't doing it anymore, or at least not to the same extent. And it's interesting. Like they were all phenomenal bands, and I think everybody's still taking a crack at it here and there. Like I think we are doing shows with Boys Like Girls right now, and like I know We the Kings gets back together for gigs and stuff like that, but
such an interesting time back then too, because like it was very much niche community, but also very popular music. Like you were getting breakouts in the community left and right constantly in terms of like mainstream hits.
For sure. I think it was such an unknown commodity to everyone, especially the mainstream.
Yes.
It was so weirdo and like off kilter with everything else, but every now and then you'd get these artists that would put their hands up from that world and break out. You could always see it. The Warped Tour was always the metric. It was like, I remember that was such a specific tour for like, you'd see a band like Paramore, right? The first time I saw them, they were on this stage called the Shira Girl stage, which was a really small stage on Warped Tour that featured female artists, which is insane to even have to think about that there was a stage that had to feature female artists, but that was the time. But like, I remember them going from Shira Girl to the next year seeing them on like a bigger stage, and then the next year they're on main stage, it's Riot era, and they're in the red and yellow, and I was like, oh, this band's about to be massive. Like, this band's gonna go. And sure enough, like that year on that record, boom, huge.
God, I miss Warped Tour, dude.
Yeah, it was
Simpler times.
It was the gauntlet for bands like us that were kind of scrambling to make it.
Yeah.
It is so interesting just thinking about, like, I'm thinking about like Mayday Parade and all these bands, and they still have like one or two songs that you put on, everyone knows the words, but like you said, you guys are now playing the Forum.
Mayday's incredible. First of all, shout out Mayday.
Yeah,
I love those
amazing.
boys. They're some of our closest friends to this day, and still put on an amazing live show. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know. We've been so lucky that people keep coming in and like finding out about us and going like, okay, yeah, sure, I'm down.
But do you think it has something to do with the success of like Monsters? Like, you guys just keep putting out songs, and like one or two will just keep taking off every few years.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think it's an effort to always keep pushing and keep reinventing and try new things. I mean, you know, I think of a song like Monsters, and that doesn't really sound anything like our old selves.
Not at all.
So I think the reinvention part of it was really important. You know, I think there's some intangibles, like nobody knew that they needed a collab with All Time Low and Black Bear. You know what I mean? Like nobody had that on their bingo card at the time. And then like we stumbled upon it, and that song came out and did incredible things for us. And you know, we're just super grateful that there was like some magic in that moment. And it did it you know, it bought us another couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the purveying factor and lifeline of All Time Low, is that we just keep finding ways to buy ourselves a few more years.
Yeah, but a part of that is consistency. Like, you got to get up and have the ability to keep swinging, you know?
For sure. You get back up to bat. You know, the batting order comes around, and it's your time to swing again, whether it was a strikeout or a home run last time. Like, not to overkill that metaphor, but
No, it's true.
yeah, big time.
It's interesting. It's really cool. By the way, like, you got to listen to the Forever Sessions Volume 1. It's waiting for you on Amazon Music. Link below.
Yes.
Plus the entire discography. The entire catalog of All Time Low is waiting
9
for you.
albums.
Yeah.
Pretty
It's a
hefty.
lot of music.
Hefty.
Listen to the re-records. Listen to Volume 1 of the Forever Sessions. Then listen to our new stuff, and then Tarantino your way back to the old stuff.
I like
That's
that.
how I would suggest doing it. If you've never listened to All Time Low before.
Can we talk about how the community has changed? Like, you're talking about like your sound changing, but also like the genre, alternative, pop
Yeah.
punk, the emo community, whatever you want to call it. It has definitely changed over the years.
Big time. Massively.
Yeah. How so from your perspective?
Well, I think, you know, the scene that we came out of was a place for, I think, misfits to fit in and find a place. And I think that's the role it served in a lot of people's lives for a long time, which is why, as I said, like, I think it was rare that there weren't a ton of mainstream breakthrough artists that came out of that world. But it sustained. It never went anywhere. And then I think after the first wave of pop punk, this is like talking back in 2010, you know, when the first wave of pop punk started to, what I would say, kind of regress a little bit and slip maybe back into the ether for different genres of music to come forward, I think alternative music as a blanket genre lost its identity. I think there was for a while, there was sort of this moment where nobody really knew what alternative music was.
Totally.
What was it the alternative to? Everything got so eclectic in a great way.
Yeah, it's true.
Because mainstream music suddenly became really eclectic, and everyone listened to everything because streaming birthed this whole new way that we all consume things. And I think somewhere in that, rock and alternative, or whatever you want to call it, went off in all these different directions. And what we do kind of maintained, but just quietly. And so it's hit this point now where I think people that grew up on it are nostalgic for it again. But then there's this whole new wave of fan that's seeing it from the outside and imagining what it was like and wanting to be a part of it. And they've recreated and rebuilt a scene, I think, that makes more sense than it did the first time around.
Totally.
Like way fresher, way cooler, way more inspiring artists, I think, and way more diversity and like interesting music. I think back then there were a lot of carbon copies of a lot of this, a lot of it sounded the same. And we were guilty of that too. I think we came out of it and we had to find ways to make it our own brand. But I think it got super kind of homogenized and just there was a lot of the same thing. And now I think you see artists doing it. Artists like, Kenny Hoopla and Willow and Static Dress and bands and artists that remind me of those Warped Tour days, but are doing it with a lot more nuance and a lot more, genre bending in mind, which I think makes it interesting.
It is like, do you think the format's just more like, not fluid, but it's less dependent on things like mainstream tastemakers?
Yeah.
Because like alternative radio is like not what it used to be.
The gatekeeping is sort of
So different.
and in a way it's been removed because you can break through with a single post now, like a good enough idea, and then a post that happens to go viral on a platform, like it can be everything, and suddenly everyone's chasing that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely an aspect to it where the gatekeepers are maybe less influential and not sort of, people are kind of taste making for themselves in some ways, which I think is cool because the good stuff rises to the top that way.
Every time. At least that's what they say. I don't know.
That's what you hope for.
Yeah. Can we talk about Popp and Champagne?
I would love to.
What was it like re-recording the record?
That one was fun because that's one that I look back on and I feel like there were a lot of growing pains with that song. We did like 2 versions of it. There's like a radio edit version of it that neither of which really, I think, capture the energy of what it does live. And I think this go around, we've kind of finally cracked the code on like making it feel as though we wrote it within the last couple of years, which is really refreshing. That's fun to do with something that's been around for that long.
So like, what is your process like when you're reapproaching these records? Like, do you have a collective conversation and just go through everything you wish you could change?
I think so. I think some of it came naturally. Some of it came from like the ways we play, like we've been playing them for years. So I think there's an aspect to it where the natural changes that we've developed
Over time
kind of went into it. But then there was also sort of, then we had to get intentional about it because we'd get in the studio and start working on them. And I'd A-B it with the old one and be like, this one's really feeling like we've strayed. Like I'm singing the melodies different. And like people who know the old recordings it's going to throw them a bit. So then there was this sort of like, get it to a point, dial it back, then see what we can add from there. And it was just a fun exercise in like, how far can we take these things without kicking them off the rails?
It's cool. By the way, it sounds great.
Thank you so much.
Well, okay.
We've heard one, yeah.
We've heard one song. But if that's any like sort of testament to what I'm getting, which I think it is, I don't know. I'm excited as fuck. I was really surprised that I liked the new one.
So was I. When I saw you guys were doing Dear Maria first, I was like, oh no.
Well, it's kind of cringe in a way, like you see this sort of thing, like Taylor had her reasons and they're very valid reasons. And like she made very true to the original copies because for her, it was about ownership and it was about taking it back. For us, it's like, we're not so, yes, that is a component of it, but it's more of like bringing them into the wheelhouse now, bringing them into the way we sound as a band on stage now. And I think, a lot of people could hear about this without hearing the songs and go like, well, you don't need to do that. Why are you doing that? It feels like it's either a money grab or it's just corny or whatever. But for us, it was like I said at the beginning of this conversation, it was a way to sort of redress our songs that makes us feel good. I don't have to go into a bar now, hear old Dear Maria come on and cringe. I can be like, oh yeah, cool, this is the new one. It sounds good.
But would you prefer like a bar or a radio station and now play the new versions of the song instead of the old versions?
I think that's the intention, yeah. I think the hope is that these can live as sort of the definitive 2024 versions of those old songs. Yeah, that's what we'd hope for. I know that that's probably wishful thinking in some ways and people are always going to default to the OGs and whatever they grew up with, but it's a way to bring people into the fold. I have had people now, and this has been refreshing, I've had people now who found out about us more recently, from Monsters or the albums more in that time period, being honest with me, being like, I had a hard time going back and getting into your old stuff because it just doesn't sound like you guys. So I think it fills an interesting space for those people who are now able to kind of hear it in a way that we would intend for them to hear it now, I guess. So if it opens those doors, great.
Listen to it, by the way. It's waiting for you on Amazon Music. Go, 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 go,
You're going to
go.
love it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I wish I heard the whole thing, but I've only gotten Dear Maria.
Really?
We didn't hear the rest, yeah.
To be fair, we are literally, I think the final mastering date is this Friday, and we're still tweaking mixes today. So we're right up against it.
So to be fair, it's not done.
So to be fair, it's not finished. But I could send you guys some unfinished mixes.
How did you approach redoing Weightless?
That one,
I want to know about the intro of Weightless, because
Yeah.
the intro doesn't sound like the rest of the song really in the original. It feels it's like,
we got a lot of heat. When we first put that song out, we got a lot of heat.
okay,
'Cause-
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite songs of yours, but like the intro, I'm like,
What is this Postal Service
yes, that's what it sounds like.
light that
Yes,
I'm hearing?
it doesn't- yes.
Because they did it well. I
Yeah.
don't know if we did. But yeah, it was the intention at the time was to, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
It was to fuck with people's heads a little bit
Might
because
work.
at the time the forums, everything was very forum based back then. And there were a lot of like gatekeeper fans in the forums that I paid way too much attention to that were kind of going like, this band's really towing the line of being kind of a credible pop punk band and then being a little too pop for my taste. And so the beginning of that song was kind of my answer to that. I was like, I want the first thing that people hear from this new record to really jar them and make them go, wait, what? What am I hearing? So we put this layered beat in, this tape loop, and built the song around that. But then, it gets pretty aggressive as the song goes on. And it was kind of, it was sort of our little middle finger to like some people that were saying that we were being too pop at the time. But recreating it was sick because when I listen back to the old one now, I'm like, we could have executed it so much better. Like it could have been a cooler loop. It could have been, we
Yeah.
could have built that out better. And so I think this time we had a chance to get the loop right, which is fun.
Damn, it was intentional.
Yeah, in a way. It was like we just wanted it to catch
Interesting.
people off guard.
And it does.
Yeah.
You're sitting there like, what is this? And then as like a couple, I don't know, 20 seconds in, you're like, okay, here's,
There's All Time Low.
there they are. They're
That's the
back.
thing I know. Yeah.
Wow.
It was for sure a way to get people a little bit stirred up, which I think every now and then you have to do. It's fun to kind of like rattle the...
But it's also so crazy that you would do it like after you have such a successful album. You come back with this album, you're like, hey, here's the first thing you're going to hear. Something to kind of annoy you.
Yeah, we almost sophomore slumped ourselves, which you never want to do, but it was the second record. So it was like we could have, it could have gone off the rails a little bit there.
So other than that, like after you come out of So Wrong It's Right, how do you approach Nothing Personal? Because you're like, okay, we have this massive like debut album. How do we not sophomore slump ourselves?
At the time, it didn't feel like it was a massive debut album. Like,
I guess so. I guess
what
looking
I-
back, it's bigger now than it was when you first put it
Yeah,
out.
like I think to be honest, it wasn't something that was like this massive overnight success. It was something that had this kind of slow build for us, and it got us to that next stepping stone of making a second record. But what it did do was open a ton of doors. Like I adore Matt Squire for making the record that he made with us for So Wrong It's Right, and we brought him back on a bunch of songs. We did Weightless together, and so that was a fun development to kind of have that handoff of doing something pretty different with the beginning of that song. But also it opened up these doors to let us work with some new writers and producers. Like I love and look up to so much he's an artist and a producer and a writer. His name is Butch Walker. If you're listening and you don't know who he is, Google him. He's an amazing artist. He played in a band called The Marvelous Three, which I looked up to coming up as a wannabe pop rocker. And then he has written some of your favorite songs for artists like Avril and Pink and just massive, massive pop hits. And to me at the time and still, he was kind of someone that I really looked up to as someone that was doing it both, was like a prolific songwriter and writing big mainstream hits for big mainstream artists, but also doing the thing that he loved and wanted to do in his lane. So getting to work with him on that record, we wrote Damned If I Do You, Damned If I Don't together. And that was a really important song on that record at the time. So it was like, that was just it started opening those doors, that second record.
Second record opens doors. Does that add to pressure for the third then?
Yeah. Well, the third record is where it gets a little funny. Cause so after Nothing Personal, we'd gone on tour with Fall Out Boy. Things were starting to feel really legit and we were gaining momentum for ourselves. And we upstreamed to a major label for the first time. So that's, that was the first time we sort of felt like we had the power of like the big system, the big machine behind things. And when you do that, there's also a lot more cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot more on the line. Like, I don't have to get into the nitty gritty of the business side of it, but it starts to get to this point where you have to learn that lesson of like, it's not all just going to go your way. You have to make some people happy, and you have to play ball a little bit. And so it was the album for us that I love that record so much, but two things happened. One, we led with some singles that I think made people go, what? To your point again, but maybe a little further this time. But two, it was the first time that we experienced the major label, like rug pullout situation that everyone hears about, where we signed with an A&R. We're going and sitting in Jimmy Iovine's office to play him the demos, and like there's no one greater at the label. Like, you're sitting with the head of the label, an iconic human in the music business, and everyone around you's kind of saying like, this, we're going to swing on this. This is going to be the moment for you guys. And then right as we approached our album coming out, we get an email from our A&R, and he's moving to Beats and is no longer working in music. And Jimmy launched Beats and sold the company and pivoted in what his focus was, rightfully so at the time. But like, the team that we had around us that was championing our music was just suddenly gone. So we're like, okay, like, here we have this album, guys, anyone? And yeah, it forced us to kind of like, we got through that cycle, but I would say we really like stumbled our way through that cycle. And then we landed in a place where we essentially asked to leave the label, and they were kind enough to let us go, because there are a lot of stories about labels not letting artists go, and they just kind of die in the ether. You know what I mean? Like, they peter out because you get shelved and that's it. So we were fortunate that they let us go. We re-signed to our original label. We went indie again, and we kind of went and made like a return to form record, and that kind of pulled us out of that moment.
I remember that era. Do you?
Yeah, it was Dirty Work. Yeah. There's an album called Dirty Work. There's a lot of great songs on it. Like, I think we made a really cool record, and some of my favorite songs that we have as a band are on that album.
I feel like Dancing was the lead single from that one, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, which, if you like, the song is bizarre.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. But it was kind of a bit of an FU to the whole situation. Again, it was us sort of trying to say, yeah, we're selling out. Like, everyone was saying that about us at the time, because we were upstreaming to this major. And at the time, that stuff mattered to people. And we sort of, it was our way of putting our own spin on it, saying like, you know what? Yeah, we are selling out. Let's make a song called I Feel Like Dancing. And let's make the music video kind of a parody of like all the things that this big bad major label is making us do. And looking back on it, I have fond memories of it. But I think when it first dropped, it threw a lot of people. And a lot of people didn't get the joke. A lot of people didn't get that it was kind of a bit. They just went like, oh, this is all-time low now, okay.
I feel like it's the same thing with Weightless. It's like this, like, people don't understand, like, you guys knew the joke behind it. People were like, what are they doing?
It took a minute for people to catch up, which happens.
Yeah.
Are you making music for you or for other people?
Oof, both, I would say. It would be a lie, I think, to say that it's entirely for us. That it's a great question too, because it kind of goes back to us talking about how it goes from being just art to being a business. And something that needs to sustain you, is that there is an aspect to it, to be real, that's like, you don't want to knock it off the rails by doing something so out of whack with what your fans want that it goes away. But that being said, I think we've gotten better over time at identifying what the middle ground is, and like that pushing our boundaries creatively to where we feel artistically satisfied and creatively satisfied, while also putting something out that I think keeps our audience happy. But every now and then that does mean pushing buttons, and it does mean rattling the cage a little bit and like putting something out that makes people go, wait, what? But I think in having lived it now a couple times, you do find that sweet spot of like, give it a year. Like, this might not be our biggest song right away, but it's the long play. And it's like, this song is going to be so important in our show 6 months from now. And we've had that multiple times now throughout our career.
I just know people are very happy remembering Sundays on there.
Yeah.
Until then, did you guys have any sort of acoustic leaning songs, or was that kind of the first one you really...
That was sort of our first ballad,
Yeah.
to be honest. Everything up to that point had been like, let's play fast and loud, and that's all that matters. And that was the first. It was Matt Squire, our producer, that went like, "You guys need a ballad. Like you don't have, you never stop to breathe."
Yeah,
and he's like,
go.
"You have more than 7 songs now, so you're going to need a minute in your show to like let people catch their breath." So yeah, we wrote that song and had the amazing Juliet Sims joined us on that one. She had been working on an album with Matt Squire at the time as well. She is now known as Lilith Czar. That's her artist name now. And she's still out there crushing it. But yeah, this re-record was cool because it was a chance to approach our first to take another look at our first ballad. But also like it's the only feature on the Forever Sessions. Mm-hmm. And so keying in on who that feature was going to be was really interesting because it was like, how do we fill these shoes, A, and who's going to do it justice? And we put a couple of feelers out, and we landed on something that I think is like wholly unique and really exciting, and I don't know if I should spoil it yet.
Yeah, who is it?
So I will say one of the people on the song is Lindsay Sterling.
Oh, wow.
Who is a good friend of ours and an amazing talent, an incredible violinist, and has built an empire around what she does, and it's so admirable. And she's like, a true homie. And that song has a bit of string arrangement on it, even in the original. But it was, none of us were gifted string arrangers at the time, so it's a bit of like guesswork there. So she's come in and done something that actually really elevates the song and takes it to a new place with her talent. And yeah, vocally, it's exciting because it was a chance for us to go and maybe do something unexpected. I've never gotten to work in this capacity with my wife before. So I was like, "Do you want to do it?" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I think it could be really cool." So yeah, she has a really great voice, but we've never worked on anything professionally together. And I was like, "I think you should do it. I think you should be on this song." And she went in and ripped it, and it's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Gives it a whole new meaning.
It really does. It really does. It's like very full circle, and to get to do something with someone that's like your closest family is rad.
Was she nervous about doing it? Because
oh my God,
it's a fan favorite.
She was, she's got an amazing voice. She's a really good singer, but she's not a studio, like she hasn't done a ton of work in the studio. And obviously like when you go into the studio to sing, it's different than just singing in a room or singing in front of people even. It's daunting, it's quiet, it's intimidating, it's just you in the headphones, and it's a little bit weird. And so like, she honestly really rose to it. She was like, she said, "I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this." And I was like, "Let's just give it a go, see where it ends up." And she crushed it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I was standing there like doing the vocal producer thing, like pushing the button, being like, "Yeah, one more take." And it's like, it's cool to have to share that with someone that's, you've never done it with, but that you're that close with in every other way. It was fun.
Wow, that is really special.
Yeah.
You guys have been together since high school, right?
Yeah, we had our ups and downs as any relationship does over time, but yeah, we've known each other since high school. We met in high school, started dating in high school, and then we've been married since 2016.
So she's really been there from day one of this band.
Yeah, pretty much. She's outside of the guys in the band, she's the person I've known the longest in my life.
Really special. Really beautiful.
Yeah, it's been fun. It was a cool, just a cool moment. And I think a lot of it, like what a lot of it came down to was like these re-records and they're reflective moments, and to share something like that with someone that's your family rather than going out and trying to chase a singer or whatever. I mean, like we've been very lucky to do that quite a few times. Like we've had Demi on a song, we've had Teddy Swims, we've had Avril on a song, and like we've been super fortunate to work with some incredible artists. And I was just like, how cool would it be to work with family? So yeah, family band now.
I just want to, this is a question for me. Like, why didn't Stay Awake make the first round?
Ooh, so that's a great one. And honestly, I think that's when we've talked about it, will there be a volume 2? I think that's sort of the purpose was to leave some stuff off so that there would be stuff to go on the next
look
one.
Forward to the next one. Yeah,
yeah, we knew we wanted to hold some back, and I think there's some other songs in that back catalog that's important to people, and we know that. And so, Volume 1 was about hitting on like the really popular mainstay songs that have never left our show. And I think Volume 2 will be about getting into kind of more of the nitty gritty and the songs that have like these stories connected to them of people that have come up to me and said, this song has done this for me, or it's a special song in my life because of this. And yeah, so it'll be exciting to sit down and kind of sequence that next one and figure all that out. But Stay Awake's one that keeps getting mentioned.
Love it.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
good.
Thank you so much.
Still so good.
Hell yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, hopefully we can do that one.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you actively writing new stuff, or are you just focus on what could be the next volume?
We haven't really gotten back into the studio to write new stuff yet, but we do have a handful of new unreleased songs. Again, I won't bore you with the details, but there was going to be a part 2 to our last album. Our last record's called Tell Me I'm Alive, and there was going to be a Tell Me I'm Alive part 2. So we held these songs back intentionally. Fake as Hell with Avril is one of those songs that was going to go on part 2. And there is a song coming with a really cool collaboration that I'm very excited about that's dropping pretty soon, that we sort of have waiting in the wings. That's very exciting too.
Who's it with?
So the band is called I Prevail.
Cool.
Oh, nice.
I'm spoiling everything. The managers are in the next room being like, shut the no, it's the song's called Hate This Song, and it's with a band called I Prevail, and it's a rad collab because, again, I think it's one that's really unexpected and maybe one of those moments where it's sort of like no one would know that it could be a cool song. And you know what they do is quite different from us. They're a lot heavier than we are, but they do it so well, and they're such a good band, and I'm a massive fan, so I'm stoked to kind of have this one coming.
Can we discuss the constant desire to collaborate with bands, whether it be on records or like in a tour? Because you do it often.
Yeah.
I mean, is there an actual reason for it?
I think it keeps things fresh. I think it pulls songs in directions creatively that we would maybe not go usually. And it just gets us thinking musically in different creative ways. I mean, like collaborating with Black Bear on Monsters was sort of that same kind of thing. And now working on this song, Hate This Song with them, it pulls your creative brain in a different direction. And I think when you've been doing it for so long, it's kind of important to keep challenging yourself like that and figuring out like, how do we make this work? You know, and even just sitting down with other artists, like Teddy Swims is on our song New Religion. And when he came in and sang his part and we kind of rewrote parts to suit his voice because his voice is just so unbelievable. And I knew he'd be able to do more heavy lifting than me because we just have different styles of singing. But it's inspiring, and it kind of, you sit there and you marvel at these people and what they bring to music, and it's very grounding and it's very refreshing. And I think that's, you know, the spirit of collaboration does that. I think it keeps bands feeling new.
How did the session with Avril Lavigne go? Do you bring her a finished song? Does she write her own verse? Like, would you start with nothing together?
We had the song. It was written, as I said, for that part 2 of the album that didn't come out. And so I took it to her, and we killed verse 2. We just muted it, and I sent it to her, and I was like, "You want to write to this?" She's like, "Okay, I'll give it a go." And then she came in. We went in the studio together like the next day, and we sat there in the room, and she hummed and kind of sang what she had. We tweaked it a little bit to get it right, and then she got on the mic and actually did it, and it was like, damn, Avril. Like, you genuinely, when you're in the presence of someone that is that much of a music legend and has had the legacy that she's had, like, I really mean this when I say it, like, it was a pinch me moment for me because I sat back and heard her voice on the song and went like, oh yeah, that's why she's Avril Lavigne. That is why. Like, she just crushed it. It was like, it was a one take.
She is timeless.
It was wild.
The last question I have is, it must be nice to be like a band that can play big venues, but do you ever miss playing small venues?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've been really agile throughout our career, and we've had ups and downs too. So it's never been a constant upward trajectory for us. There have been tours where we've been on the rise and gotten to big rooms, and like you said, like going and playing the Forum, and it's an amazing box to check. But then like there have been records where we cool off a little bit, and you have to ride that out. And it's like, you know, you kind of take the step back down to the venues you were playing before, and there's something to be said for all of them. I mean, just recently we went and played Troubadour out here, and that's the first LA venue we ever played. So it was kind of a nice full circle moment in celebrating all of this new music and, well, new old music. And yeah, I mean, we packed I don't know how many people that place holds, maybe 400 or something like that. So a smaller show for us, but it was like the energy in there was wild.
Right.
It was so sick. Like, and it reminds you why you do it. It's different connecting with 400 people than it is with a big arena, because you just can't fathom everyone. You know what I mean?
Even as a fan, like I'm gonna stay very vague here, but I recently saw a band I really like at a very large venue, and it just didn't hit the same.
Really?
Yeah, not at all.
It's tough when that happens. Yeah. I hope it wasn't us.
It definitely wasn't you. No, it wasn't you.
You're like, speaking of which, you guys at the forum.
Not great.
Just didn't hit, man.
It is not quite there.
But then I just remember seeing them in a smaller venue, and I was like that's what, when I see like a show like that, like that's kind of the environment I want to see it.
It was built for that.
Yeah,
It was built for those rooms. I think, I'm gonna there's a band that I love that I believe can do it both and does it really well, and that's Green Day. They're they're like stadium rock band at this point and do a stadium show so well, which is also hard to do, but they'll still come back and do they'll rip a Troubadour, they'll go play at the Roxy, and those shows are like, it's like they never left.
Yeah,
it's like they've been touring in a van for 30 years and they never left those clubs. It's so sick. There's something to be said for it. It's special.
Yep,
the energy is just amazing.
Truly special. You good?
Yeah, we could talk all day, but I'm sure he's got other things to do.
I appreciate you guys having me so much. This has been sick.
Nah, dude, you're amazing.
Thank you for having me.
And genuine fans, and he really does love you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I do.
Thank you.
I've been listening for years, since like middle school.
Listen, I mean, as we're speaking now, it's not done yet, but by the time you see this, it will be done, and it's available wherever you stream music. But you can listen to it on Amazon Music, The Forever Sessions Volume 1. Please come back for Volume 2. We're always here, man, so please
Love
come
to.
and hang.
For sure.
I really
Love to chat again.
appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Alex, from All Time Low, everybody.
Thank you.